Hey, Chris Manning here from the Locked On Cavs podcast, coming to you solo on Saturday, March 5th, looking at Cavs 76ers from last night. This was a big game. We don't do full pods on the weekends, but we wanted to give you a bonus segment here to highlight this game, get you some analysis on Saturday, to hold you over until Monday when the full show comes back. Let's get into Cavs Sixers from last night.
You are Locked On Cavs, your daily Cleveland Cavaliers podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
All right, to start with the nuts and bolts of this game, the Cavs lost in Philadelphia 125 to 119 against the 76ers. The Cavs did lead by as many as 21 points. They were particularly great, I believe, in the first half of this game and came out really hard against the 76ers. They, though, have now lost 6 of their last 7 games, and this was a winnable game. Ultimately, Philly deserves a lot of credit. They came back and won. They were much better in the second half. Coming at the Cavs, they were much better in the fourth quarter, which I'll talk about some of the numbers from that stretch of the game. Some of the other nuts and bolts, at least statistically, Darius Garland, who played the entire second half, played 43 minutes, had 26 points, and a career-high 19 assists versus just 5 turnovers. A much better performance for him versus the other day against Charlotte when he had 33 points, but more turnovers than assists. Isaac Okoro had 20 points, including 13 in the first quarter. He had 22 points, Jared Allen had 20 and 7 rebounds. Evan Mobley had 7 points and 4 rebounds. J.D. Osman had 20 points off the bench. The Cavs had 64 points in the paint and 19 in transition, a sign that they're getting offense where they want it in the half court, and a sign that they're at least getting it on the break and getting some points against a good defensive team that is anchored by Joel Embiid, one of the best defensive players in the league, an MVP candidate. They have other good defenders as well, but the Cavs did some work. Jared Allen, was much better in this game, offensively and defensively, I thought, than he was when the Cavs played Philly not too long ago. Okay. So here's how they ultimately, I think, lost this game and where it got out of hand for them. They lost in the fourth quarter, but being outscored 28-20. Field goal wise, they were even in terms of how many shots each of these teams made. Philly was 9 of 17 from the field in the fourth versus 9 of 21 for Cleveland. But here's where this breaks down. The Cavs are 1 of 7 from 3. That was 0 of 1 for Darius, 1 of 2 from Jetty, 0 of 1 from Mobley, 0 of 2 from Kevin Love, and those misses came on back-to-back possessions earlier in the quarter for Kevin. Philly, meanwhile, was 3 of 8. The 76ers were also 7 of 8 from the line versus just 1 of 1 for the Cavs in the final period. Philly is the high when it takes the most free throws of like any team in the league. They have Embiid, who gets a ton of free throws. They now have James Harden, who gets a ton of free throws. This was going to be a problem. The Cavs managed that gap, I thought, very well by being aggressive, by playing with pace, by playing more downhill and attacking the paint earlier in this game. I thought that was a really good stylistic choice by them to go and do that, and with the energy they played at. But that didn't hold down the stretch. Philly got to the line more, and that was the Cavs made just 20 points in the fourth quarter. That ultimately was a big difference maker in how that ultimately played out. And that's just tough. And the 3-point value matters too, but the free throws ultimately really, really mattered. I do still think that this was a Cavs game that was a step in the right direction. This was more energy. This was more effort. This was more composure. This was all of the buzzwordy things you want to say. You could throw out there. All the cliches that I could throw out there. This was better than we've seen of late. This was a better performance than we saw against Charlotte, than we've seen in basically any of their other losses of late, right? Like, this was a team that came out early and looked really good. They were aggressive early. They were attacking the paint. They were playing with pace and focus and grit and getting, as JB Bickerstaff likes to say, getting in the trenches. They did not take a big punch in the first quarter and have to come back and navigate this and like maybe have a chance to win late if it's a bad team like Indiana, or kind of struggle through and lose to a team like the Wolves, like do all that work to get back, get done in by a 3 late, make some other mistakes, whatever. They didn't look flat like they did against Charlotte the other night. This was a Cavs team that frankly just looked more like the Cavs that we've seen. More like the Cavs that have gotten a lot of success this year by playing hard, by playing effortful, by being a team that is engaged with what is going on the floor, that is pushing and making things happen and not just having to meander their way back into a game. This is a really, really important thing if it goes forward. The Cavs are in a position now where they're obviously very tight in the standings. Sunday's game against Toronto remains one of the biggest things that we could look at there, right? Like the Cavs, if they win, are 3 games up on the 7th seed due to Toronto kind of struggling this week, as the Cavs also struggled. They should send like a flower basket or like a edible arrangements up to Toronto for their help and kind of making this easier to navigate right now. But like that's a winnable game. If they come out with this effort, they come out with this level of focus, you would feel good about their chances. And I think if this is a sign that, okay, they are going to finish the rest of the season strong, they're going to go into whatever part of the playoffs they get to playing with this. If this is something that they can take this performance and then build on it, they'll be in a better spot than they were just a couple days ago. I want to note a couple small things from this game. Number one, I thought Isaac Okoro was great in the first quarter on offense. He was decisive. He was aggressive. He was out in space. More of that from him, even if he's not this efficient every night, even if he's not going to give you double-digit quarters on a regular basis, because he's not. That's not what he is. This is the kind of thing that you can work with. This is the kind of thing that is a big deal. He was moving more. He was cutting. He was out on the break. I mean, I loved the decision from Darius. It was one of his easy assists of the night, but they took advantage of Embiid falling down and Okoro got a dunk. I love that he just gave Isaac the points and keep building on that confidence, keep building on the momentum, and reward him for sprinting down the floor and not just assuming Darius was going to lay up the ball. I love little stuff like that. And Isaac as a cutter, as a guy who can do some damage, with that Euro step, who can be a guy that helps you push the pace and transition, that is a useful offensive player. I also liked Lamar Stevens back in the rotation after being out a little bit, being his kind of quasi backup. Maybe that was a hardened matchup thing specifically, but I'm a Stevens guy. I believe that he does winning things on a basketball court. I thought that was good. Now, the Darius Garland of it all, I thought he was great. As good as we've seen in some time. The shot making that they needed for him that he pulled out was very, very important. Important for a team that is figuring out its offense, that kind of had to still kind of navigate without some ball handlers and things. I think the one downside is that I don't understand fully why he plays the whole second half. I get leaning on him. I get if you're trying to win this game, you have an opportunity to go beat Philly on the road, and Philly might make the finals. They might, for my money, they have the MVP and Embiid. They have Harden now. Like, you had a chance to win this game. I get going on that, and I think this maybe answers my own question here, or my own concern here. But I think maybe like a 5-minute break for Brandon Good. Just give Brandon Goodwin 5 minutes. I know Goodwin wasn't great in the first half. Give Garland a breather. Maybe he has more energy down the stretch. Maybe when Tyrese Maxey is going off for Philly and Darius has to be the guy that answers, maybe there's a little bit more lift in his jump shot. Maybe there's a little bit more energy for him to make that to do some stuff. If he had 5 minutes at late going from the end of the third into the fourth or something to come back and have that energy down the stretch. I think that was a tactical error on JB Bickerstaff's part to just ride Garland like that. I get why you do it. I think certainly this is where the Cavs really miss Karis LeVert. They would like to obviously get him back and not have anything with that foot sprain. This was supposed to be a time where he's getting integrated. You're figuring out what he's going to provide you. He would have helped in theory in this game, and at the very least, the reps would have been worthwhile. But we didn't see that obviously, so maybe this is how you get to Darius playing as much as he did. But I think that was perhaps a tactical error. And look, this Cavs team is missing LeVert. No Colin Sexton, obviously. Ricky Rubio. This is still a team really lacking ball handling, and I think that's sort of how you get to Darius Garland playing the whole second half and playing 43 minutes. And I think Mobley, I think all these guys to some degree are feeling the grind of that 82-game season. And I think figuring out how to better manage that going forward is maybe one of the lessons we'll see the Cavs take away from this year. All in all, look, I think an adequate performance, I think a positive performance. I don't think they were happy that they lost. I think they would have obviously liked to win. This is to play as well as they did for most of this game, to score a season high points in a quarter, like as they did in the first when they scored 43, was a real positive. But there's work to be done, I think, to improve on this. Sunday's game against the Raptors will be a very big deal. We'll be covering it all on Locked On Cavs, and so hope you tune in. Subscribe on YouTube if you have not already. Do want to tell you that today's episode was brought to you by Built Bar. Built Bar is the best tasting protein bar on the market. Look, there is no better way to support your New Year's resolutions than with a Built Bar. They're low calorie, high protein. They can replace your candy bar desire to have a candy bar treat when you want one. Most Built Bars contain 130 calories, 4 grams of sugar, and 4 grams of net carbs with 17 grams of protein. And they're all about the taste. They will make something taste delicious first, and then figure out how to make it healthy later. And I don't know how they do it, but they always do it with flavors like white chocolate, cookies and cream, my favorite cookie dough chunk when they have that around, mint brownie, and a whole bunch more. Go to built.com, use the promo code LOCK15 and get 15% off your order. Again, use the promo code LOCK15 for 15% off at built.com. Again, thanks again for tuning in. Thanks again to Built Bar for sponsoring this Locked On bonus segment. And the Cavs lost 125 to 119. Still a positive. Looked more like themselves, but they did lose. Make Sunday's game all that more interesting, all that more exciting. Until next time, this has been Chris. I've been Chris Manning from Locked On Cavs, from Dime Mag, from Fear the Sword, from Cleveland Magazine, and wherever else is crazy enough to let me write words for them. Until next time, be well, be safe, stay hydrated.